Hi everyone, it's Jen again, and I feel like this is probably the third time I'm trying to record this video because I keep on going off on tangents and repeating myself, and so I'm really going to try to stick to the topic that I want to discuss today, which is about adding features to kind of where I'm trying to go with my visual novels when I'm adding more, I guess, non-standard visual novel elements to my visual novel games. And what I've learned from doing Soul Labyrinth and what I'm trying not to repeat in my newest project. So one of the feedback that I got from Soul Labyrinth was that the puzzles were just seemed kind of arbitrary and difficult to figure out, and that they detracted from the story. The story and the character development is always going to be my primary focus when I create visual novels. That's why I'm choosing a visual novel medium. I feel like if I had wanted to focus on puzzles and strategy, then I would be making a different type of game using a different type of engine. So I'm not really sure why I felt like adding these puzzles was going to be a good idea, because they weren't very well thought out and they were kind of confusing and not well telegraphed or well explained, or even the hints were not very good hints. So they weren't what I don't think they added to the story, and I think a lot of people who play the game would argue that it would be better to not have them in there at all, so they could just focus on the characters and the story and the world building that I was trying to accomplish. So this time around, I have been pretty much sticking to just your standard visual novel kind of features, and the types of image buttons and screen interactions, and I guess any elements that seem non-standard visual novel have a core visual novel mechanic. They're just kind of packaged differently. Let me explain what I'm trying to say by all that word salad I just said. So, when you have your visual novel gameplay element, it's basically just this menu choice of saying, okay, choose A, B, C, and that is your input as the player of this very bare bones gameplay. This is where you as the player actually get to make an impact on the outcome of the story, is by using this menu system and making your choice here. Which is fine. It's what we expect when we play visual novels. But I found one of their strengths is that you are trying you can immerse people into your story in a similar way as if they were reading a novel, only you have some extra graphics and audio and to kind of guide the reader than you would in a standard novel. And giving them some agency will hopefully make them more immersed and have more engagement with the story. They feel like they have more investment in what happens because they have made some choices that will lead to that has an influence on what happens in the story, or at least theoretically they should in a good visual novel. I don't know why you would have choices in a visual novel if they wouldn't, right? But the downside of this mechanic is that when you are giving the player these kind of text options in this menu system, it becomes very apparent, it's very blatant that this is what the programmer is allowing me to do. So let's pretend that in a menu option where you are telling the character to move, to north, south, east, west, or maybe to the store or to the garage or to the house or something like that. When you see the options of the text written out that way, you start to immediately feel like, okay, I'm being pigeonholed by the programmer or the storyteller to only go to the store or only go to the garage. Well, what if I want to go to the park? Why isn't the park an option? And this might be the same as a sandbox game where they can move like north, east, west, south, and you only allow them to go to a store or a garage or to a house, and there's no meaningful locations that they can go to or interact with other than those 3 options. But they're still gonna feel like they're exploring because they're moving around the avatar themselves, as opposed to like being given the text options of you can go to the store, or you can go to the garage, or you can go to the house. Kind of wandering into it on their own, even if they are being blocked by like fences and trees and every other obvious barrier to like moving anywhere else meaningful, is still gonna feel a little bit more to the player like they have made the choice to go to the garage. Like, I discovered the garage myself because they weren't told explicitly go to the garage, even though the programming all led to like go to the garage, like that was their only real choice. It wasn't like explicitly written in text like go to the garage. So they're still gonna have some sense of discovery, of a sense of accomplishment, like I found the garage, as opposed to being I was told to go to the garage. So it's a very subtle difference, and the programming and the outcome is kind of the same. But to the player, the way that it's presented is going to give a different impression. So that is my goal with the image buttons and using kind of arrows to move instead of like using these menus, is I just want to present the same options in the visual novel that like lend themselves to the same visual novel mechanic. I just want to present it to the player in a different way that's going to make them feel like they have more choices and more freedom and more accomplishment at like finding the choice rather than being given the choice. And let me show you an example of like what I mean by opening my new game here. So when I go to this test battle, this is kind of the beginning of being on this label, and this is going to be the screen that the player is going to interact with the most, where I refer to it as the exploration mode, where I have the ability to kind of like assess what my stats are, where I'm at, what my quest is. I can go into my inventory, that sort of thing. I can go into my map. I can assess where I'm at, think about where I want to be, where I want to go with these movement buttons here. Or I can choose to inspect these different clickable objects or initiate dialogue with the character. So having these types of buttons for all these choices is essentially the same as just having that menu where, like when you talk to him, I have these dialogue options. I could have made all these options that are like interactive buttons. I could have just done them all like with this menu dialogue system. But I think by presenting it in different ways, it's going to make the player feel like they have a little bit more of a hand in discovering the options than just being kind of told explicitly through text. And that is kind of like my my approach with this. So if I try to move, instead of continuing to talk to him, it's going to skip right to him trying to stop you. So you have kind of the choice to skip a bunch of dialogue by trying to leave early. And these bars are showing how our previous choices and interactions with the character up into this combat screen have affected. They've influenced how the rest of this battle will progress by giving us handicaps and giving us advantages that we might not have had we made other choices with the previous dialogue and with like trying to move early and those sorts of things. Now I do have your typical kind of like turn-based RPG options here, but I also have interactive kind of like scene elements here that you can click on. And this is sort of the tutorial fight of the game, so the options are pretty limited, but for the most part I plan on having the enemy clickable in order to kind of give you hints as to what maybe you should be strategizing to do to win against them. And then I have different objects that may help you or hinder you in the fight or distract you from the fight. So if I just try to use these options straight, they can have an effect. So like if I try to use that, and that was not that effective of a strategy. There is RNG here to the outcomes of both his turn and the player's turn, but I have it skewed so that if you do use a number of different strategies, you should almost always defeat the encounter unless you have like ungodly bad luck. Like if you are just super duper cursed, I guess it's possible to fail the encounter. But I think that most RPG systems are sort of skewed that way. You know, where as long as you are following a strategy to a certain degree and you are not like woefully underprepared, then you should be able to beat an encounter the majority of the time, barring just like super duper bad luck. And I think that the randomness of some of the results, it can just kind of give the game a little bit less predictability. I don't want people to do this encounter more than once and have like the outcome be exactly the same, like down to the very same dialogue and down to the very same bars, you know, just by repeating like the same options. So in that case I used evade. If I click on this wolf skin, then I pick it up, and then we reveal that there's like a couple objects underneath it. He's gonna take his turn. And then you can see that I have an enhanced version of evade because I can use the wolf skin to like to help me get better RNG. So if you talk to the wolf before, or you click on him for strategy tips, before you pick up any objects, it'll mention like, oh, you know, he's got claws and teeth. I don't really have anything. I wonder if there's something I can use that'll help me combat somebody with like superior weapons. And so that's kind of the hint to try getting an object. And the only way that you can really fail this battle, because there's like 4 different ways to resolve it, and I have 4 different endings to the battle depending on how you resolve it. The only way that you can really fail it is if you don't interact with any of these anything at all, and you just kind of go for just the plain attack, plead, evade options without interacting with anything in the screen. So that's kind of what I'm trying to condition the player and to do, is to kind of like use all your options, not just your standard RPG stuff here. Attack without the rifle, pretty ineffective. I will have to have super duper luck in order to like actually defeat him by just attacking without the rifle. If I pick up the rifle though, get your turn. And then we use the rifle. Well, I missed. I had bad luck there, but if I do manage to hit him, it will be way more effective than just doing a standard attack. That was also some bad luck there. I essentially just got crit twice. Not good. Alright, let's try shooting again. Got a better shot that time. Not bad. And there's other ways to defeat this encounter other than just like kind of blasting him with this weapon. So like if I try to plead. That was not effective. I took a lot of damage there, even though I did start to build up this secondary bar here, which is another way to resolve this encounter. If I pick up this pendant, and I try using this plate again, I'm not going to take all that extra damage that I took last time. Anyways, you kind of get the idea of what I was trying to go here. I wanted to give this encounter a little bit of a different feel, like the sense of it being a higher stakes combat, I think, than if it was just having menu options to do any of these things. When I was playtesting this with my several different friends, some who are experienced with playing games and some who are not, originally it was just text, and it was just text and menu options. And for the most, everybody was engaged with the combat, even with it just being straight menu system. So I felt like I had a pretty decent combat system, even though it was super simple. The kind of like the constant back and forth with the antagonist, with that wolf monster, with the conversations that you were having with the wolf monster, and with the added element of kind of having some RNG and having the very, very simple strategy of having to pick up the objects, which was super obvious in the menu version, because it's like, oh, I can attack, I can plead, I can evade, or I can pick up the wolf skin. Well, pick up the wolf skin sounds like kind of an important thing to do. It seems like so specific that like maybe I should do that. So almost everybody picked up the wolf skin first turn, versus when I presented it to them in this kind of button format, image button format. It was all the same options, but their choices kind of varied more than when they were using the menu system, and they felt more. There was kind of almost like a little bit of, when they picked up the wolf skin and they saw the gun, and they're like, oh, that's what I should be using to attack with if I want to attack. So again, just presenting the exact same gameplay, but in a different way to hopefully enhance the experience. That's what I'm trying to accomplish by adding extra features or non-traditional, I guess, not built out of the box RenPy elements, as far as like, if you look at the example, the question, it doesn't have that presentation shown, because it is more work, but I think ultimately it's worth it for the player experience and for this feeling that I'm trying to get the player to have. But it's not the number crunching, stat building, optimization that you get from a role-playing game. I'm not trying to create a combat system like an RPG. I feel like if I did, then people would just start clicking the text as fast as they could to try to get through, to hurry up and resolve it. And that would break from the immersion of the story. I want people to actually kind of read the dialogue and the descriptions that are happening as the combat is unfolding, as you would if it was just a text game. I just want to try to enhance that experience a little bit through having a more interactive presentation. Okay, I think I've explained it the best I can. I don't know if I got my point across, but hopefully somebody finds it helpful. And thanks for listening, and enjoy the process. Bye.